The river is a healer, the river is a sage. The river knows no end and the river feels no age. The river is a leader every single day. It's living in the moment and it always finds a way. Water heal my body, water heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water I feel whole. The river calls me over, it's calling out my name. In the day and in the night I hear that river all the same. It's calling me over, calling out my pain. Oh, a river gathers tears just like a river gathers rain. Water heal my body, water heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water I feel whole. The river is a traveler, always on the go. Oh, a river never worries if it's fast or if it's slow. River, take me to where I need to go. Just relax and let the river flow. Water heal my body, water heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water I feel whole. Water heal my body, water heal my soul. When I go down to the water, by the water, by the water, by the water. When I go down to the water, by the water I feel whole. Water heal my body, water heal my soul. When I go down to the water, I go down to the water. When I go down to the water, by the water I feel whole.
Good morning. Welcome to the home of the Calgary Unitarians. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your journey of faith or search for meaning, welcome. If you are visiting for the first time or the first time in a long time, know that we are grateful to have you with us. We come together in beloved community to grow in wisdom, to welcome and deepen relationships, and to act for a just and sustainable world. My name is Jane Eber, and I use the pronouns she, her, and I have the privilege of serving on your Board of Trustees as your president. Please join us after the service for a virtual coffee hour where we will meet in small breakout rooms and get a chance to socialize. This congregation is very special to me because of the warmth of this community and also for the spiritual freedom it gives me. Wherever you are located now, please acknowledge the traditional lands on which you live. For those of us in Calgary, we acknowledge that this meeting takes place on the traditional territories of the people of the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, Piikani and Kainai First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wellesley First Nations of the Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. The city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. We acknowledge that we are all treaty people. And now to Deborah for our chalice lighting.
We use a chalice to represent the bright light within each person, coming together here to offer warmth to each other, to flame our desire for understanding, to illuminate possibilities and shed light on injustice. We light the chalice as a symbol of our reunion, the reuniting in this virtual sanctuary to share the flow of our hearts with one another. We gather together in ritual to celebrate our fountains of joy, to hold each other through storms of grief, to guide one another through rapids of transformation, to rest together on ponds of stillness. Together we honor the spirit of water, its many forms, and its life-giving essence. Holding all of this, we light our chalice. It is so good to be together, reconstituting ourselves after the summer. We gathered with mixed emotions, joy and delight in joining, frustration and disappointment. For many of us, not all, that this is virtually, that we are unable to touch or hug or hear our voices united in singing or laughter. Yet we come together with gratitude that we do have this virtual sanctuary. Today we modify our gathering, adapting what would have been to what is possible. Such are these times, changing, modifying, adjusting, day by day. And also transforming, imagining possibilities that never would have been considered except for these exceptional times. Let us gather then with gratitude, acknowledging the challenges to be sure, yet striving to live in the possibility and transformational potential. This first service after Labor Day, we use water and flowing back together as a theme. While we will not be able to pour our individual water contributions into a common bowl, we will use the image, the metaphor of water. It would be good if you have a glass of water close by, though it's not entirely necessary. With gratitude, we come together, and I especially want to express thanks to all who sent in photos and words for us to use this morning. Thanks to Mady and Ev for creating the visuals, and a special thanks to Paul and Hendrik, our AV team, noting that Zoom keeps changing its protocols, and we have had to deal with a few changes and glitches. Such is what we are getting used to. I want to thank the Worship Arts team's member Lara and Pam for their contributions, and board member Jane, and our staff, Sheila, and our wonderful director of music, Jane Perry, who has a few more words to offer.
Good morning, friends. It's wonderful to be back with you after a summer away. I was deep in my garden, and I'm happy to be back with all of us this morning. For some of us, this is our long-time church family, and it's great to be back together with friends, to be able to see names of those familiar to us in the attendees list on this Zoom meeting. For others of us, this might be our first time to a service and a Zoom service at Calgary Unitarians. If that's the case, warm welcome, especially to you. Here we are, all of us together, joining together in community. So let's join our voices in song. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
A wisdom tale. A wisdom tale for today. This is a story about a stream who, from its source in faraway mountains, passing through every kind and description of countryside, at last reaches the sands of the desert. Just as it had crossed every other barrier, the stream tried to cross this one too, but found that as it flowed into the sands, the water simply disappeared. It was convinced, that stream, however, that its destiny was to cross this desert as well. And yet, there was no way. Then, a hidden voice coming from the desert itself whispered, "The wind crosses the desert, and so can a stream." The stream objected. That is only dashing itself against the sand and being absorbed. That the wind could fly, and this is why it could cross the desert. But said the stream, "How can I?" By hurling yourself in your own accustomed way, you cannot cross, whispered the sand. You will either disappear or become a marsh. You must allow the wind to carry you over to your destination, was the whispered reply. But how can this happen? Asked the stream. By allowing yourself to be absorbed into the wind, the desert replied. This idea was not acceptable to the stream. After all, it had never been absorbed before. It did not want to lose its individuality. And once having lost it, how was one to know if it could ever be regained? The wind, said the whisper, performs this function. It takes up the water and carries it over the desert, then lets it fall again, falling as rain. The water becomes again a river. But how can I know that this is true? Protested the stream. It is so, replied the whisper. And if you do not believe it, you cannot become more than a quagmire. And even that could take many, many years. In any case, it will certainly not be the same as being a stream. Well then, asked the stream, can I just stop here and remain the same stream I am today? You cannot in any way remain the same, whispered the desert sands. Movement is your very nature. It will never cease until your true destination has been reached. When the stream deeply considered this, echoes of the truth began to arise in its mind. Yes, this is true. It understood that this is the only real and intelligent thing to do. And the stream raised its vapors into the welcoming arms of the wind, which gently and easily bore it upward and along, letting it fall softly as soon as it reached the roof of the distant mountains. The stream was able to remember its prior dilemma in the desert, and now realized the goal of its long journey, its true identity, and its deathless nature of its true being. And this is why it is said that the way by which the stream of life crosses the desert of this world is written in the sands. We are, I think, each of us like that stream, making our way through life, sometimes flowing smoothly and sometimes knocked about by whirlpools of life. Each one of us is also required at times to transform from what we have been to what we might not know, assured only that we are striving for wholeness and doing so in love. This community too is like the stream, or perhaps more a river, each person adding to the flow, many streams coming together. A river has purpose to flow to the sea, or at least to the lowest ground. As it follows its purpose, its destiny, its mission, it traverses obstacles, creating waterfalls and rapids. There are moments also of calm and widening itself, perhaps into a lake. Yet it is always flowing, always moving, always transforming. As our many streams converge again into this river of community, may we be willing to give up a little of our individuality and be transformed, become part of a wider community. May the river of this community carve canyons of care and valleys of peace. May we experience the calm lakes of compassion and babbling brooks of learning. And may justice pour down like water and peace like an ever-flowing stream. May we recognize the myriad different streams that all come together, streams of all sizes and of all ages. And I invite our amazing Director of Religious Exploration, Sheila McMaster, to offer a few words.
So we're going to now do a responsive reading. It's number 729 in our hymnal, The Winds of Summer. And you can choose who to join with. Lara is going to read the solid text, and I'm going to read, Pam, I'm going to read the italics. So Lara.
You and I and all of us blew about with the winds of summer,
Following the sun in different ways of freedom and play.
finding rest in the cool stillness of shadows and moving to the slow, heat-struck rhythms which turned the long hours of summer light.
Now is the time for gathering in. We come together at this time and in this place on the bridge of autumn.
Summer is fading backward into memory, and winter waits in snowy brilliance.
We meet with eagerness and delight, needing one another for sharing.
We have joys and sorrows and hopes to share, questions, things we care about and want to help make better.
Things that we would like to understand, ideas waiting to be heard.
Today, we are together in gladness. Once more, the special community that we call our church.
A community of all ages that sings its songs, tells its thoughts, asks its questions, and searches together with courage and with love. Now we're going to take a centering moment to the images and the haikus that were sent in by our members. And Jane is going to play the Cape Breton lullaby. So I invite you into a centering time, first with the haikus, and then the visual reflection, and some of the ways that water has flowed through our individual lives this summer. Pristine mountain lake, paddling glacier blue water, stroking through stillness. A drop of water, rain, hail, tear, summer sprinkler, essential moisture. Shower for flowers, drip drop, splish splash on the earth, life-giving water.
This morning, we use water as the metaphor and the theme for the day. We recognize our human dependence indeed the need of all living things for water. We are so very fortunate in this country to have an abundance of water, of clean water. We recognize also the absence of water can cause great tragedy, as droughts dry up water, the lifeblood of the earth, limiting crops and escalating impacts of fires. We acknowledge the concern as well of too much water in the form of tsunamis, landslides, unprecedented monsoons, and floods, the consequence and the aftermath. We bring these concerns for the tragedies caused by water's absence or overabundance, and the recognition of our blessing of water here. And I light our global candle. We have concerns for the world and many in our own individual lives as well. Most of us are stressed with the lack of human contact, with the forced changes in our work or economic situation, decisions about safety. Some are struggling with health concerns, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. We send healing thoughts and energy to all those in need. We send grounding energy to the parents making the difficult and right for them choices about school return. So many personal cares and concerns spoken aloud and held in the silence of our hearts, recognized in the lighting of this candle. And of course, there are joys in the community. Some new beginnings. Holly is back at school and Breton takes up post-grad studies. We have a new member. Welcome, Daria. Some of us were able to connect with family over the summer. And of course, there are all the September birthdays. May our joys find expression and be magnified by our community connection. May this candle hold and brighten them. I'd like to invite you into a moment of meditation and reflection. If you have a glass of water, I invite you to take from it just a drop and place it in the palm of your hand. You now hold in your hand is part of the water which was the cradle of all life on this planet aeons ago. The first rain that splashed down on the hot earth to form the first sea. Each drop in sunlight has risen from the sea in countless ages and fallen to the earth again as rain. The drop you hold in your hand or reflect on in the image has been a prism forming myriad rainbows, has traveled underground streams, bubbling through dark caverns, the architect of cathedral caves, formed valleys, split granite. The drop you hold in your hand has flowed down broad rivers, has risen on the sap of trees, has been the sweat of slaves and the tears of children. It has become the foam-topped waves and deep, unfathomable depths of vast lakes and seas. The drop that you hold in your hand has been part of the great flood. It has been a dewdrop on a blade of grass, a drop that has been pounded through the heart of whales in blood and lain in an eagle's egg. It has traveled in the fluid of a poet's brain and dripped from the wounds of the dying. The drop that you hold in your hand has been trapped in the snows of the Arctic, reflected the sun in a desert oasis, and refreshed the weary. This drop, unimaginably old, yet fresh and new, is evaporating slowly from your hand to mingle with the air that you breathe, perhaps, or drift in a sun-topped cloud 1,000 feet above the earth. Imagine its journey from your hand. Where will it go? You can perhaps direct its journey as it evaporates. Send your consciousness with it. It is the water of life. It is still water. There is a river flowing. To Jane.
There's a river flowing in my soul, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. Let's sing together.
There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a
I walk the beach alone, yet never truly alone. Around me, the waves, the birds, the trees, the breeze, and a few other people too. I walk the beach alone, yet not, for in that place I feel a part of it all. Those most profound moments of feeling a part of the vastness, deeply connected with the all one, for me happen most often when I am alone. For most of us, I think, recognizing ourselves as one stream flowing into and being part of the great ocean of existence. Water is such a wonderful metaphor for flowing back together. It's not surprising that it has become one of the two community rituals celebrated in most Unitarian Universalist congregations. The many individual streams flowing back into community at summer's end. Our many individual drops in the bucket, providing sustenance that a single drop could not do alone. Water is so significant to all of us, the most important element to our existence. Next to air, but even before we could breathe, we were all formed in water. Our mother's womb, our original universe, each of us living through the whole of evolution as we grew in that embryonic nurturing fluid. Water, so significant to us that pre-Socratic philosopher Thales proposed water as the primary element, the matrix of existence. I remember writing a paper about Thales when I was in my undergrad studies, and I think Thales would have been a Unitarian Universalist if he was alive today. He attempted, you see, to find naturalistic explanations of the world without reference to the supernatural. He explained earthquakes by imagining that the earth floated on water and that earthquakes occurred when the earth was rocked by waves. Before Thales, the Greeks explained the origin and nature of the world through myths of anthropomorphic gods and heroes. Phenomena like lightning or earthquakes were attributed to the actions of the gods. Thales had a profound influence on other Greek thinkers and therefore on Western history. Many philosophers followed Thales' lead in searching for explanations in nature rather than in the supernatural. Others returned to the supernatural explanations, though couched them in the language of philosophy rather than myth or religion. If you specifically look at the influence Thales had in the pre-Socratic era, he was one of the first thinkers who thought more in the way of logos than mythos, in the way of logic rather than myth. Friedrich Nietzsche, in his Philosophy in the Tragic Age of the Greeks, wrote, and I quote, "Greek philosophy seems to begin with an absurd notion, with the proposition that water is the primal origin and the womb of all things. Is it really necessary for us to take serious notice of this proposition? It is, and for three reasons. First, because it tells us something about the primal origin of all things. Second, because it does so in language devoid of image or fable. And finally, because contained in it, if only embryotically, is the thought, all things are one. Nietzsche's reflection. I walked the beach alone, and yet not, for I was a part of all things with the recognition that all things are one and connected. I walked the beach alone, and yet not, for you were with me. Walking the beach, I thought long of this community, saw some of your faces in the waves, heard your wisdom in the breeze. When the sun glistened off the water, a flash of remembering a collective enterprise. With the rain, the remembrance of shared tears. The fog brought memories of moments of confusion and doubt, yet somehow a close embrace. And the sun setting on the ocean, the soul-warming reminiscence of pain held in silence, witnessed and eased in being together. All the yearnings and joy of community, this community, reflected back in observing the water, the waves, and the tide. I was a lucky one to be able to travel a little this summer. Just a short time, though, and then a longing to return came upon me. Perhaps it was knowing that my time was almost at an end was so limited this summer, and that it would be best to move into a willingness to leave. And that brought the thirst to come back to this, my chosen community. That thirst for community quenched as we gather again, though not physically together. I invite you to take a sip of your water if you have it there. An action to bring into physicality the thirst-quenching potential of community. Drink as much as you like, that it might fuel us for the significant work before us this year. Decisions to be made and direction to be determined. Drink in the deep satisfaction in being with one another again. Continue to find ways to tell our stories, to revive enthusiasm for our shared enterprise. There is so much we can do with the limitations that this time presents, but also with the possibility. Like the stream at the desert edge, we too must figure a way across this time, a way to live into our vision and to realize the new realities upon us. We cannot remain the same. Movement and change are our destiny as well. And the choice is to engage or resist, to set a course or be directed by circumstance, to be courageous or apathetic, to be inspired by each other and by what is possible in shared action, to be lifted by the winds of potential and be reconstituted as agents of justice, as a community enacting our values into the world. What we offer as a community blesses the world and needs to be shared. Through the interdependent web of life, the waters flow. With each drop, the mysterious gift of life given. Each drop holding all of history and nourishing everything. Let the waters flow through us with love and compassion, breaking the dams of indifference and setting free a flood of hope in a world leached dry by poverty and greed, hatred and war. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings. We are connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. Many rivers, many streams, one ocean. May we recognize the abundance in our lives and share where and how we can. Blessed be, and a little more about that from Jane Ebbern.
We encourage all who gather here to grow more generous in spirit and in action. This is the end of the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring the human being closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will support this self-supporting faith community and its many ministries. Your gifts will now be most gratefully received. Thank you.
We continue now with our closing hymn for this morning, and this is one of the big favorite hymns in this congregation, Blue Boat Home. There's something about the flow of this piece that allows the singer or the listener to just sway gently. It's that feeling of rocking, of comfort, and maybe of being in your canoe, your kayak, your rowboat, your sailboat. Let's sing together, Blue Boat Home.
Still my twilight universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue platform.
Thank you, Jane. That was wonderful. Our closing words this morning are by a Bengali poet and Nobel laureate, Rabindranath Tagore. Stream of light. Stream of life, sorry. The same stream of life that runs through my veins, night and day, runs through the world and dances in rhythmic measures. It is the same life that shoots in joy through the dust of the earth in numberless blades of grass and breaks in tumultuous waves of leaves and flowers. It is the same life that is rocked in the ocean cradle of birth and of death, in ebb and in flow. I feel my limbs are made glorious by the touch of this world of life. And my pride is from this, the life throb of ages dancing in my blood this moment. Now back to Deborah for extinguishing of the chalice.
We light a chalice to begin our service each time we gather. When we extinguish it, we know that we take the warmth of this community, the joy we have in being with one another, with us as we go forth. I extinguish the chalice, inviting you each to take it into your heart, that it may nurture you as you go forth this day.
Spirit of love, come unto me. Sing my heart on the sterns of compassion. Long without need, rise in us need. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Moves only close, we set we free.